a remarkable woman who has shattered barriers and redefined the meaning of success in her multifaceted roles as a highly accomplished professional and passionate advocate. Sabrina Ben Salmi is a dedicated mother. From her personal triumphs over adversity to her unwavering commitment to empowering others, Sabrina's journey is a testament to the power of resilience, passion, and the unbreakable bond of family.
Thank you so much, Sabrina Ben Salmi, for joining me here on AwareNow to share this space and to share your story. Thank you so much. Let's begin this way. You, Sabrina, have achieved remarkable success in your personal career while also raising 5 very accomplished children. So what's been the most challenging aspect of balancing your professional and your personal life?
I think the most challenging aspect of that for me was not having extended family support when I started out. When my kids were really young, my mum was around. You know, I didn't want to burden her. I'm an only child, so I didn't really want to put so much pressure on her. And I think the challenge was that I was going into a new pathway while I was a mother. I became a mother at 20, so I was very much growing up alongside my children. And I think the difficulty for me was that I lived a very sheltered life. I was very innocent, very unaware, low self-esteem. So motherhood brought that all out of me. So balancing the two, I remember, as you asked the question, I remember very vividly walking into my house when I came back from a training, a seminar on the weekend. And my husband at the time was there, my children were there, and I was just really pumped and excited. It might have been Anthony Robbins, you know how it's really fiery, high energy and high-fiving. And I remember I was bringing that home and they looked at me like they thought I was going mad. They thought something was really wrong. And I think it was that moment that made it really clear to me that I wasn't balancing at all. I was a hot mess. I was very confused. I was discovering aspects of myself and I didn't know how to articulate it. This whole separation of, you know, closing the door to the 9 to 5, being at home, closing the door to a meeting. It works for some, but it doesn't work for all. And I realized very quickly that I just was not going to find the balance. It just was not working. People in my personal life were not understanding what I was doing. People in my professional life were very different. And I was living this kind of Clark Kent reality, and I just couldn't keep up. So I think this is when the emergence happened, where my kids started to integrate into my life. And looking back to where we started to where we are now, there's a seamless connection and there's so much space to breathe because it was so challenging. And I think because I wasn't just setting up business, I wasn't just in a career per se. So my background is in computer science, and I didn't go into that after I became a mother. So it was very much, I was rebirthing myself. So you can imagine all the difficulties and the trauma and trying to find out who I am, redefine who I am, raising children. I was recently married. There were just so many different moving components that I was everything to everyone, but I didn't know who I was to myself.
Everything to everyone. Almost a stranger to yourself. So, thank you so much for sharing. And I think so many people can relate with that. I love how you reference this rebirthing. You're talking about birthing these children, these beautiful, incredible children, but rebirthing yourself and alongside them. Let's switch gears. As a UN Women UK delegate and an advocate for diversity and inclusion, what personal experiences or insights have shaped your passion for these causes? And second part of that would be, how do you hope to make a lasting impact in these areas?
So I think all aspects of my journey really contributed to me being on the platform and contributing about the injustice of women. So my mother's St. Lucian, my father's Nigerian. I remember growing up and I wasn't raised with my dad, I was raised with my mum. And I remember when I met my dad about 9, we had a very turbulent relationship. And when I was about 18, my name was changed to his name. And I remember him saying to me, I'm only changing your name but all of the inheritance will go to your brothers. I've got younger brothers on my father's side. And I always desperately wanted my father's attention. And it was a big wake-up call to how women are treated. So when this opportunity came up, when I started to look about all the injustice around the world, I started to think about, why am I getting this opportunity in the first place? Sometimes we're like, oh my gosh, how can I do this? It's really natural for us as human beings to do that. But what we can sometimes do is reflect and say, everything that has happened in my life, the things that I'm aware of and unaware of, actually prepared this for me. That's why it's here. And what I quite quickly realized is that it was just about my own journey. It was things that I saw working with clients. It was things that I experienced firsthand. So just the injustice to women and children around the world rendered me speechless. So being on that seat made me realize that I really am in a place where I can make a real difference, a real change. So induction was very hard for me. I was sat alongside Lachey and Tracy, and we're all delegates together. It was very hard to watch the realities of what we are up against. It was a massive wake-up call. I've traveled, don't get me wrong, but when you see things really concentrated, it was a bittersweet. It was really good to be in the seat to say, actually, I can make an impact. And that impact I really want to make is giving the women a voice, being a voice for those that don't have a voice, because I know what it's like to be silenced. I lived most of my life as a cage bird. I didn't start speaking until I was about 31. Before that, I was just a people pleaser. So people keep seeing this side of me where I'm really, vocal, but it's because I've just found my voice. I've got so much to say. And that really made me realize, yes, there's a reason why I'm here. And there's a beautiful saying, it's like walk through the door like God sent you. And I very much feel as if God has sent me, and it's not about me, it's about serving. It's about me looking at all the training and experiences that I've encountered and how can I pour in. So whenever I turn up, I don't like to perceive or preconceive what I'm supposed to do. I like to feel the room. Like when I met you, you understand exactly what I mean. You're very deep in that sense. I present myself and see what's being presented, and I handpick from my experiences to actually serve at that moment. So the impact that I really want to make is to make a big difference to how women can have freedom and safety, because I think it's so important, but also to find their voice, to have rights to education. So there's a number of things that Lachey and I and Trey Sean are changing at the moment. Not everything I could say, but really excited to be on that seat.
It's amazing work. And you have an amazing voice. So I'm so happy that you found it. Let's talk more along the lines of your story. Let's talk about your book, Lone Parenthood, How to Create the Life That You Deserve. So this speaks to your experience with single parenthood. Can you share how this experience has influenced your approach to parenting and your drive to transform the narrative of parenting for millions of families?
Yeah. So becoming a single parent shifted me in a way that I can't really imagine. And so when I became a single parent, it was actually the biggest fear. So I was raised in a single parent household, and I saw the struggles of single parents around me and various things such as that. But it taught me things about myself that I wouldn't have known I had instilled in me had I not gone from that experience. I feel that pretty much even when I got married, I was very much a lone parent. There's this term, a married lone parent. I felt very much that I didn't have that emotional support, the financial support, and so on and so forth. But what it taught me was really how little choices people had, and mainly single mums. There's single fathers as well, and I don't think the arduous task is any different depending on mother or father. And I think there's a lot of emphasis on the great work that single mums do, and there's not much highlighted about single fathers. But that was the first lesson I learned. Becoming a single mum was the realization, I know it must sound absurd, the reality that there are single fathers, because I grew up hearing single mothers, but there are single fathers doing amazing work. But what it taught me is that how important family is, how important infrastructure is, how important to know who we are before we start that journey of motherhood, knowing how to ask for what we need. That's the time when I really hit burnout. It was very much like, who do I turn to for support? You know, who do we have? And one of the things that came up that was really deep for me when I wrote this book was everyone always felt they had the right to tell single parents what they needed, how to resolve that problem. Very little people were asking. Had I not been a single parent, I don't think I would have had that deep dive into investigating. I started to go out and helping single mums and helping single fathers. We ended up on radio, TV, documentaries. And I was just moved on this journey that no one is the same. Everyone's story is different. And that strength that we have to tap into. But one of the things that really upset me is so much isolation for myself and those around me, in that sometimes when you're a single parent, you really are on your own. Whereas sometimes you're a single parent that you're just separate from your partner. But so many people here in the UK, there's so much on their own. They have no one to turn to. And I think it's when you get to that lowest point, you realize the only way is up.
We're going to shift gears again. We're going to go to a different topic. There's just so many sides of you to talk about. I mean, my goodness. Let's talk about dyslexia, being dyslexic, and winning the Best Dyslexic-Owned Business 2021 Black Achievement Award. It's a significant accomplishment. So I guess my question for you here is, how has dyslexia impacted your life, both personally and professionally? And what message would you like to convey to others who may be facing a similar challenge?
So dyslexia wasn't diagnosed until university.
Mm-hmm.
So it was one of those moments going, oh, that's why I do this. But growing up, I did have a lot of challenges in school. And I remember that I moved from school to school. I went through a lot of bullying. So I had a tracheotomy. Anyone sees this, they kind of ask, what is this? So I had a tracheotomy that actually saved my life. So I had various complications after that. So there's many speculations as to where it came about. So dyslexia personally made me feel very inadequate. So when you come from some cultures, they're very much pressed on how you show up. So because I didn't show up like my peers or like people around me, I went through quite a lot of bullying and separation and didn't feel good enough, inadequacy. So I think when I was young, I made a decision quite early on that I was going to just be me. I can't say what one thing it was. I think it was a collection of things. So I was just known as Sabrina with a head in the clouds, Sabrina's a fairy princess, just all of these references. I've always been a big dreamer. I've always seen visions. I've always just seen blueprints, and then I can piece things together. And especially when I'm serving, like when you've got those gifts, they don't activate when someone says, show me. Like, no, it doesn't activate like that. It's when you're serving, I can just see things. So I started to just tap into the benefits and realizing that I can't make people like me. But what was going on internally is that I was confused. Although I couldn't make people like me, I was confused as to why was I so different. So what I do remember is that when I was diagnosed with dyslexia, it made sense. But I realized I developed a lot of masking. So as females, when we have different profiles, we actually mask very well. And there's scientific facts that prove this. Like, you can diagnose boys very evidently, but women just learn coping mechanisms. We're just built that way. And what I realized, I just took a deep breath, and there was such a weight off my shoulders, realizing that I had developed coping mechanisms that masked over it. So it just made me release and learn how to actually operate with it. But this dyslexic thinking, I must say, it's my superpower. I am an oddball and I like it. I will do very quirky things and I love it. And I think really and truly winning the award, I'm so glad you said 2001. It was such a significant moment for me. Here's why. I realized that there's so much negative connotation, not so much now, there was so much negative connotation. I just didn't tell anybody, because people would say things like, can you read? I'm like, I can read. You know, I can actually read. There's so many profiles, and people don't realize, again, we are all so different. I have like memory issues and various other issues that come up. And people just assume if you have dyslexia, you just can't read. But there's so much more to that. So when I won the award, it was the first time I actually added it to my LinkedIn. I was like, it's something to celebrate. Because what I remembered is that when I started doing a lot of my training, if you say to someone, act like an old person, they would hold their back, walk slowly. So I realized that when I was kind of telling people about dyslexia, they were having the perception I couldn't read. They were having all these perceptions that I just couldn't do so much. And I saw it as a handicap that as soon as people knew that, they just made a decision about me. So I kind of put it away. So when I won this award, I brought it to the forefront and I started sharing more. And it actually was a seed that got us to go into school. Strangely enough, I reached out to this lady who's amazing, Maria on LinkedIn. And I just felt a calling to go into schools to work with SEN children. So that award just transformed the fact that people go, oh, yeah, I didn't think you had dyslexia and various. And it was just so liberating. And we actually developed the Ben Salmi Schools Tour as a result of winning that award. So I went into schools, we go into schools as a family, as a panel to inspire and raise aspirations. And primarily we do mainstream and SEN schools. SEN schools in the UK is special education needs. So it's across the spectrum for disabilities. And let me tell you again, it was a God moment. I walked through the door and I knew why I was there. Maria had taken me to one of the first careers days. It's not something that's very common for SEN children. When they go through the system, they get to a certain point, they just go into life and that's it. They don't do GCSEs. And it was at that moment I knew that it was an injustice not to share me being dyslexic. Because of what we're doing as a family, it will be liberating for a mother to see that. It will be liberating for a child to see that. And it was very much a time where I felt I was going back into my childhood and being that person I would have liked to see when I was young, just to tell me to keep going. So it was just so moving. So thank you so much for bringing that up. So it was liberating. Really, really was liberating.
And I love how you share about this in the way that it was something that you tried to conceal, and then to have that transformed into something that you could then celebrate. And in your personal celebration, inviting other people to celebrate, adversities that they have. So, one more question for you today. It's, we mentioned the fact that you have these incredible children, remarkable success at very young ages with their own brands, publishing houses, signature platforms and programs. What key principles or values have you instilled in them that you believe have contributed to their success? And how can other parents learn to approach their children in a way that will help them get to where they know that they can go?
Talking to you is really special. I was listening to the question, but there's something moving in me. It's really, really beautiful. So when I became a mother, the first one, I was a hot mess. She calls herself the guinea pig child, and it very much was that. I always giggle when she says that. And I think slowly but surely, God knew that I was a bit of a slow learner. I had to have a few children to get it. I didn't quite get it the first time. But one thing I would definitely say is preservation, cultivation. When you talk about instilling, people, I'm often asked this question, what do they do? Like, what do you feed them? And I'm so excited when I'm asked this question, because it's the question of invitation to whoever I'm with. The reality is, it's not so much instilling, it's about removing line scale. The reality is, it's not so much about me doing, it's about being. The reality is, it's less about teaching, it's more about allowing. So as I became a mother, it wasn't so much a time that I had to tell them, it was a time for me to learn. So I became a mother 5 times over. it was a time for me to realize, well, this child's come to challenge something. So, like I said, I didn't have a voice. And, I had various children that would just put me in situations when I was public and I had to speak and I had to be strong. So each child came bearing a gift. And there's various things, depending on what your background is, you'll realize that when a mother carries a child, we're not just creating a human inside of us. That child also sends stem cells to damaged organ. For me, that was everything. That child, born or unborn, becomes part of our organism forever. And these realities just changed my mind. It blew my mind. I was like, wow, like who's blessing who? Who's doing it really? There is a partnership here. And very early on, I remembered just being in conversation with God and God telling me not to interfere with what's already there. They are not a blank canvas. And I asked them, what's your superheroes? What can you do? And I never forget, we were in my daughter's room actually, and they were all very young. Like Lachey couldn't have been no more than 9, and Trey's 4 years younger than her. They were very young. They all started firing off, and I was like, whoa, what's going on? And I realized that I was missing something. I thought that I had to be, do, have, give. And I remember that these kids, they took me on this journey of surrendering. If you're a parent, you know exactly how humbling it is to surrender, right? Yeah. You've got a 2-year-old, you want to go leave a store and they want that toy and they have just gone into one. You have to surrender because it's a moment when you realize who's really in control. You have to find a way to negotiate. And what I realized is that by being present, they had to trust me to share with me. By allowing them to solve problems, that organically, each of their personalities started to reveal themselves. And I'm telling you, as you're watching this, it will make sense to you when you think about your own children that, yeah, I've got one that's the peacemaker. I've got one that will fix anything. I've got one that will break everything. I've got 5. I pretty much have, all or mixed personalities. So we've got bam bam boys. We've got the gentle ones. We've got, the verbal ones. We've got the ones that didn't speak much. And this is why I'm so excited about the journey I'm having with them, because naturally parents just feel, oh, I've got a talkative one, they can be on stage. Well, actually all 5 of mine are on stage because you don't need to be loud to have a message. You don't need to be quiet to be the peacemaker. The reality is they will reveal to you exactly who they are. So some of the things that I definitely did think about as a mum to instill was just love, the peace of love, the peace of allowing them. A lot of what I'm doing, it's, that kind of thing, try it once and then see how it goes. As parents, we do that to try and encourage our children to see their strengths. And it's very much getting them to lean into everything and then see what one that works with them at that time. So we have this agreement in the family. We'll all go along to support each other and we'll always try something at least once. If mum knows that they've got a bit of a special talent, so we try it a few times more until they get it. But the reality is this, me becoming a mother changed me. And the common thread again, it rebirthed a part of me that I never knew existed. And it rebirthed again and again each time a child was born, because it healed a part of me, it confronted parts of me. There were so many things that were happening. But I always say to parents, my children publish books, but they're not doing anything different to your own children. Has your child ever written a story? Has your child ever taken a picture or drawn a picture so they can do the same? They speak on stage. Do your children speak constantly at home? Do your children have solutions to problems? So the reality is, what I'm trying to birth, the message of the family is, you're just getting to see my children being raised. It's not really about business and all the accolades and being on stage. The most precious part of me being excited for them and proud of them is watching them be them for as long as possible. This journey for me has been the most sacred one, because I get to see them reveal them to the world, but also them reveal them to themselves. And the whole mission around it was really that I knew what it was like to be shut down as a child, not from my mother, but just the outside world. It wasn't okay to be you, stop being a dreamer, get your head out the clouds. And the idea was really, how do I preserve their natural essence for as long as possible? so that they can choose them, so they don't go into the world wanting to be picked. I spent so much time waiting for someone to pick me, love me, accept me, appreciate, validate me. It's tiring and draining. And what I get to see is that they're just being playful. And out of being playful, they go into a Zen space. You see, like an artist, we would go in and interrupt them painting, because we'll interrupt the masterpiece. So I get them to really get into that Zen mode. So when they're creating, they're just as excited as you. Sometimes people go like, oh, wow, that's so cool. And they go, yeah, right. Because we're just in a bubble. And I must say, we walked through the back door with this. We didn't come in going, oh, we wanted to do this. It organically took place. And I remember someone coined them the Jackson 5 of the personal development world. And I thought it was so amazing, because that wasn't the goal. And the question I have for whoever's listening to this is, what did you create in your life when you were most joyful? What brings you the most joy? What do you wake up feeling about? Or what do you thinking about? Or what do you go to bed thinking about? The reality is, if we can get in that space, I think that's the God space. I think that's when things start to happen. We're not worried about what's coming in, the likes, the ticks, the following. It's the being. I don't know who they're going to become. They're just playing right now. I can just point out things so that they can go, oh, I'm aware of that. Just imagine what they might choose to be in the future.
Thank you so much for sharing your story today and for sharing so much of yourself. Thank you for helping all of us become a bit more aware now. Thank you.